For my final project, I chose to speak about America's most influential writer, Ernest Hemingway. He was not only a disciplined, hard-working writer, war correspondent, and Nobel Prize winner, but he was also a hero, an adventurist, and a thrill-seeking sportsman. Ernest Miller Hemingway was born on July 21, 1899, in a quiet Chicago suburb of Oak Park, Illinois. He was the second of 6 children in a family of Dr. Clarence and Grace Hemingway. Often his family spent time in their cabin in Michigan, where little Ernie accompanied his father on hunting and fishing trips, which became his favorite pastimes throughout his life. In high school, Ernest was an excellent student. He liked to play sports and showed a great interest in boxing and football. He published his first writings in the school's newspaper, Trapeze, and also wrote for the school's yearbook, Tabula. After his graduation, Ernie went to work for the Kansas City Star. In a short 6-month period, he adopted a declarative, short writing style, which became his trademark. In 1918, Hemingway decided to serve in World War I. He was rejected by the U.S. Army because he failed the physical exam. Numerous boxing matches had caused him permanent eye damage. Ernest proved to be a challenging persona when he signed up with the Red Cross as an ambulance driver in order to participate in World War I. The Italian government awarded him the Silver Medal of Valor for helping his fellow soldiers to safety, although he himself was seriously wounded after a brutal attack on the Italian front. The war experience provided major material for Hemingway's future works. At the age of 20, Ernest finished recuperating at a hospital in Milan, Italy, and returned to the United States to work for the Toronto Star newspaper. Hemingway settled in Chicago, where he met his first wife, Hadley Richardson. After the marriage, the couple moved to Paris, where Hemingway worked as a foreign correspondent for the Toronto Star. During that time, he covered events on all of Europe and interviewed important leaders such as Lloyd George, Clemenceau, and Mussolini. In Paris, Hemingway became acquainted with Gertrude Stein, the mentor of circle known the Lost Generation. The majority of its members were expatriated writers. He was introduced to many great writers and artists of post-war generation. After Hemingway became a part of the Lost Generation movement, he popularized the term in his first and famous novel, The Sun Also Rises. As an epigraph to the novel, he wrote, "You are all a lost generation." Lost because since after the war, their lives became meaningless, as they found themselves absent of traditional values. After 2 successful years in Paris, Ernest and Hadley became the parents of a baby boy named John. As a child, he was called Bumby. In their family, it was praxis to give nicknames. During this period, Hemingway acquired several nicknames. He was called Ernestoic, Tatty, Hemi, Ham, and Ernie, but his most common used name was Papa. This epithet well suited his strong, manly character and affixed him with a desire to be respected, admired, and obeyed. Close friends and family referred to him as Papa in a softer, gentler manner, where to others it meant suggestive respect. In fact, the Havana bar, El Floridita, named Hemingway's favorite daiquiri Papa Doble. The late 1920s was a period of committed work and many publications for Hemingway. In 1926, his first novel, The Sun Also Rises, was published. In the story, Hemingway portrayed the lives of people affected by the war, the Lost Generation. The emotions and psychology were expressed through life's events. The novel brought the author great success. Soon after the publication, he divorced Hadley and swiftly married the woman he was having an affair with, Pauline Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer was a writer for a fashion magazine. In 1928, when Pauline became pregnant, the couple moved to the US and settled in the Key West. Their sons, Patrick and Gregory, were born there. Charmed by the beauty of the little island and the great opportunity to fish, with the help of Pauline's uncle, Papa purchased a Spanish colonial house. Hemingway worked a lot in his studio. There he wrote his finest novel, A Farewell to Arms. It alone made Hemingway financially independent and successful. In the 1930s, Ernest traveled extensively. He journeyed to Africa and gathered priceless materials for new stories such as Green Hills of Africa, The Snows of Kilimanjaro, and The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber. Through his life adventures, like bullfighting in Spain, big game hunting in Africa, and deep-sea fishing in Florida and Cuba, Hemingway derived the inspirations for his future books such as Death in the Afternoon and The Old Man and the Sea. All of his stories are descriptive, authentic, and distinct because they are based on his travel experiences. Hemingway followed one principle. As he once said, "Don't bother with churches, government buildings, or city squares. If you want to know about culture, spend a night in its bars." Bars were his favorite diversion. Papa drank anything and any time of the day, as did the characters in his stories. He drank to ease his emotional rage and the physical pains he suffered. He endured various injuries such as 2 plane crashes during his visit to Africa that cracked and fractured his bones as well as causing some organs to rupture. In the 1937, Ernest left to Spain to cover the Spanish Civil War for the North American Newspaper Alliance. His affair with a fellow reporter, Martha Gellhorn, led to the divorce with Pauline and the third marriage in 1940. With his new wife, Martha, Ernest settled into a farmhouse in Cuba. That same year, he published his famed novel, For Whom the Bell Tolls. During the time in Cuba, he continued working hard. Although there was very little of his work published, it was put in print posthumously. During World War II, Ernest and Martha traveled side by side as 2 fellow correspondents to China to cover the events. In 1944, Hemingway decided to continue war reporting and left for Europe. When he was in London, he met Mary Welsh, a correspondent for Time magazine. Later, she became his 4th wife, after the divorce with Martha in 1945. The couple lived in Venice, then returned to Papa's farmhouse in Cuba. In the years that followed, Hemingway worked on his most glorious novel, The Old Man and the Sea. It was published in 1952 and exceeded all expectations. The book brought the author wide recognition and financial success. In the next 2 years, Hemingway was granted the Pulitzer Prize for the novel and the Nobel Prize in Literature. At this peak of his literary career, Hemingway was experiencing the most difficult time of his life. He was suffering from depression, alcoholism, and numerous illnesses. Papa left Cuba forever after the communist revolution that was sparked by Fidel Castro. His home was taken by the Cuban government and later was turned into a museum. In the year 1960, he bought a home in Ketchum, Idaho, where Ernest and his wife Mary continued to battle with his impairable mental and physical health. Eventually, he was hospitalized and received electroshock therapy that led to the loss of his memory. This made it impossible for him to continue writing. On the morning of July 2nd, 1961, just a few weeks before his 62nd birthday, Ernest Hemingway committed suicide in his home. Papa was buried in the Ketchum Cemetery. The memorial was erected by his family and friends just outside the town in Sun Valley, Idaho. The plaque on the memorial displays his own words he wrote once to a friend. Best of all, he loved the fall. The leaves yellow on cotton woods, leaves floating on trout streams, and above the hills, the high blue windless skies. Now, he will be part of them forever. His amazing personality and creative talent influences artists even today.